Yes guys, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we're going to be discussing how I finished 270th in the world. By far my best ever season. And using the Fantasy Football Fix skills benchmark, we can really deep dive into how exactly I got that rank. So if you are new around here, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and if you do enjoy the video, make sure you drop a like. So without further ado, let's get started. Right guys, as I mentioned, we're going to be kicking this off with the Fantasy Football Fix skills benchmark, one of the many preseason tools available now on Fantasy Football Fix. Now, the Fix Skills benchmark gives you a chance to evaluate your season and also previous seasons before that, alongside comparing yourself against legendary managers. So it's a great time to check yourself up against those and how you match. Can you beat any of those legendary managers? So you can see here a nice little evaluation of some fun bits of the season. The nemesis of the season for me being Kevin De Bruyne. Hero of the season obviously being Salah, and then we got games started and also most games benched. Now, what I do like here as well, a nice little bit here just to evaluate the season, is my best short-term transfer. Who would have thought would have been Sonta Fernandez for a positive 23 points. And we could also look at the worst transfer decision as well, but we never want to be looking at those in case they're too painful to actually look at. So first up, the Fix transfer benchmark. I want to cast your eyes to the average total transfers. Now again, me finishing 270th in the world, my best ever performance. I really want to understand whether the moves that I made were the right moves going into this season. And a strategy that I have always adopted is keeping your transfers to a minimum, holding on to players a little bit longer to see how they perform. And you can see that in my total transfers, only 36 in comparison to the top 50 managers of last year and also the all-time top 50 managers. And you can also see that the average total hits as well. I only made 4. Again, when we compare that to the other departments, 12 for the top 50 and 14 for the all-time top 50, I try to really reduce the amount of points hits because I do believe that it's very difficult to have a real positive outcome when you do take multiple points hits. So when you do make them, you've got to really make sure that it is a strategy that is going to pay dividends. One thing I will say is, with a season like we had with COVID, with double game weeks appearing left, right and centre, there are opportunities available to possibly take points hits. I think if we go into next season and it's a little bit more normal, then the points hits become harder to justify as players find it harder to return them in just single game weeks. So for me, trying to keep those transfers less and trying to take them points hits a lot less is definitely a strategy that I would recommend you taking, unless you really enjoy an aggressive strategy. Now, you can see the net points gained from regular transfers. Although I have had a great overall rank, 215 net points in comparison to the other departments is really, really low, which is very surprising. But where you can see I had big returns was from my wildcards that I had 202 net points, which again has come out really well against the other all-time top 50 managers, which is the one I like to really compare myself against. Now we have some great graphics here about the average transfers and the average hits as well. You can see my red line there. Most of my hits being in and around the same sort of bracket between game week 15 and game week 18. Again, sometimes you need those points hits to restructure the team for a longer term perspective, which again, I don't mind managers doing at all. And another great graphic here, just for you guys to check out in regards to how many total hits did the top 50 managers make and compare that against yourself as well. But what I want to quickly cast your eyes to, guys, is when the top 50 managers made their transfers. Now, again, last season being COVID hit, announcements were being made left, right and centre, which meant transfers needed to be made later in the game week. And that's reflected in the graphics you can see here. Most transfers being made the night before or the day of the deadline. And while COVID last season made it very, very difficult to make early transfers, this is a strategy that I've always adopted. I've always tried to make my transfers as late as possible to gain information from press conferences and maybe some potential team leaks. I think there's definitely value in making early transfers, but the only time I would ever make that is if it's a player that you absolutely deem essential and potentially a price rise or fall is meaning that you will miss out on that player. Otherwise, I think later transfers are by far the best strategy to adopt going into the new season. Next up is the Fix Points benchmark. Now again, this is just a general overview of the points that you have scored across the course of the season. Again, you can see the average game week points in the graphic below. But what I want to quickly draw your eyes to is the average points bench. Now, again, this is one of the worst things that can happen in a game week when you get massive points on the bench that don't come into your starting 11. And you can see that 217 points bench for my team, which in comparison to the all-time top 50 and the top 50 managers isn't actually too bad. Now, I think the reason maybe for this is because I wildcarded earlier, which meant that once I'd wildcarded, I was able to then get rid of kind of a 15-playing squad and get cheap enablers on the bench that allowed me to invest into a starting 11 or maybe even a 12 player. I think for those that maybe wildcarded later in the season or maybe had to gain value in other players and hold on to more premium assets on their bench, maybe seen more scenarios where they were getting more points on their bench throughout the course of the season. And again, you can see a great graph of the cumulative points as well. Now, coming into the fixed budget section, this is a really interesting one here because it allows us to view what the team value was over the course of the season and whether we can gauge whether that equals points. Now, you can see here, average team value for me was 105 million in comparison to the other managers, pretty much on par across the course of the season. Now, while team value definitely has its place, when you're looking to wildcard, when you're looking to free hit, it gives you the opportunity to basically build a more premium squad and get yourself onto them premium assets. 100% offers value. However, again, in the season that we just had, team value become much more irrelevant, and that was because of the unpredictability of things. While a player was rising in price, it didn't mean it was better value than holding off that transfer. Holding off that transfer 9 times out of 10 is much more valuable than actually pulling the trigger early on as we gain information. So again, while team value is great, I still think gaining information and knowledge on a player or a team is a much better strategy over the course of the season, and definitely something that I adopted while I was playing last season. Now, one thing I love about this on the fixed skills benchmark is the overall budget that we do invest in players and the positions. Now, you can see here, it's no surprise that the midfield is where all the investment was going into. You can see 40% of my budget was invested in the midfield. And again, that is testament to the way that FPL has kind of been going over the last few years. A 5-man midfield is really where the value has been lying over the course of the last few seasons. Again, extra point for clean sheet, extra point for goal. We've seen the likes of Salah, Son, for example, being amazing value in FPL. Now, the defence as well, you can see being a large chunk of the investment as well. And while that is going to be 5 places in comparison to the 3 of a forward, when we're seeing the emergence of these amazing fullbacks and the likes of Trent, James, Chilwell, I won't be surprised if that becomes even greater in the next season. And I think it's definitely a trend that we need to get used to and adopt going into future seasons. I think defence and midfield is really where the value is and where our budget should definitely be heavily invested going forward into coming seasons. So next up is the fixed formation benchmark. And again, this is some real insight that we need to take into consideration for the upcoming season. So you can see with my team, the main formation that I did use was a 3-4-3 formation, which is a bit of a surprise considering how poor the forwards were this season and how great the defenders and midfielders were from a value point of perspective. And you see the second most used formation for me is a 3-5-2. Again, gearing towards the value that the midfielders were offering. Now, in comparison to the likes of the all-time, very similar. But when you see the top 50 managers, you can see the 4-4-2 formation being used more prominently than the 3-5-2. And I definitely think going into the new season, this is where I like to think that the value is going to be. We've seen the value in defenders with the fullbacks and the wingbacks and the value of the midfielders. Unless forwards emerge in going into the new season, which, yes, we could see a rejuvenation of them, I really do think that maybe a 4-4-2 formation or a 4-5-1 formation is going to become more and more popular as the seasons go on. And while that could be a reflection on the COVID season that we had and the likes of Bamford, Calvert-Lewin disappointing us week in, week out, if we continue to see great value with these defenders and maybe even some great price midfielders, I think the 3-4-3 is going to be going a slight death, and I think the 4-4-2 is going to be the way forward. Now, one thing I absolutely love here is the fixed team structure benchmark as well. And this gives us an idea on basically how our team was set up over the course of the season. So again, you can see my team on the right-hand side there continually had a 12.5 million midfielder, which was going to be Mo Salah, of course. But you can see the structure here, then owning a 9.5 million, 10 million midfielder, which was pretty much going to be Son for the course of the season. And then a sprinkling of a mid-price midfielder, followed by some budget midfielders. And you can see on the defender side as well, a 7.5 million defender and a 6.5 million midfielder. So plenty of investment in the defence. And surprisingly, a bit of a premium forward, followed by some budget forwards alongside that. And you can see in comparison to the top 50 and the all-time top 50, very similar strategies. The all-time top 50 adopting more of a premium forward, which I imagine is the likes of Harry Kane. But what I'm definitely taking from this sort of insight is a premium midfielder is absolutely essential over the course of the season. That is really where the big points lie. And I think going premium with the defenders is absolutely a strategy that we need to adopt as well. Now, what I do love to see here is how this compares to game week 1, which we can see on the screen here. And you can see every single department here going for a double up in their premium midfield. Most likely, and we will remember this, Mo Salah alongside Fernandes. Now, very interesting to see that in game week 1, we had this sort of strategy. But what you can see there is it meant we lost the second premium defender. So while we all had a 7.5 million defender, most likely Trent Alexander-Arnold, we lost the opportunity to have maybe a Cancelo, maybe a Reece James, maybe even a Robertson to basically have the premium midfielder. And while I really do like the opportunity of a premium midfielder, I really do think that having the double up of a premium defence alongside a premium midfielder is the best strategy to have going forward over the course of the season. We've seen in these graphics that we eventually adapt to that way anyway. And unless a midfielder emerges as an absolute essential alongside Mo Salah, I think going for the premium defenders alongside one premium midfielder is the best use of the strategy. And one thing I didn't touch on was the goalkeepers. Keeping it cheap is definitely the way to go in regards to your budget. We can see in all of the departments here for top 50 managers, all-time 50 managers and myself, going for the 4.5 million goalkeeper and maybe a sprinkle of a 5 million goalkeeper here and there is the right move to make, because the gulf in goalkeepers between a 4.5 million and a 6 million goalkeeper really doesn't pay dividends over the course of a season. Now, deploying your FPL chips at the right time is a really important part of FPL and something that can contribute towards a really good overall rank. And that's something that I felt like I had done okay over the course of the season, and the fixed chips benchmark gives us an opportunity to have a little bit of look on the insights. Now, bench boost again was something that I deployed after my wildcard, and we can see 27 average bench boost points, which is higher than the top 50 managers and the all-time top 50 managers as well. But triple captain is definitely where I let myself down. 10 additional points, which is much less than the top 50 and all-time top 50 managers. I know in particular I missed the Salah boat when he went big in that game week in the double, and definitely missed out on that one when I played an alternative chip over that period. But the free hit was something, again, that came out okay. 80 average free hit points, which is a little bit better than the all-time top 50 managers. But again, deploying your chips at the right time is an important part of the season to ensure you have a good finish. Now, what I do like here is that we can see when managers use their chips. Again, we had 2 free hits, so it's worth mentioning that it's a little bit skewed on the graphs here when we come to the free hit section. But we can see the bench boost was much used in the back end of the season, alongside the use of other chips as well. The triple captain mainly being used in double game weeks as well. But you can see here, triple captain was massively dominated by Mo Salah. No surprises there, being one of the most consistent returners over the course of the season. 100% for myself, the all-time top 50 managers. But sneakily, a few of the top 50 managers put in De Bruyne as their triple captain, hopefully in that time where he scored 5 goals against Wolves. But what I think this information shows here is that putting the triple captain on a premium proven asset is definitely the route to go for. And then the outcome, whatever happens, will be what it is. I think the decision making on a premium asset is the right move to make. Now, picking the right captain is honestly one of the most important parts of FPL. If you can hit a captain every single game week, that will have a major factor towards your overall rank. And that's something in which I believe I really got right this season and why I had such a good overall rank. We can see here the total captaincy points, 822 for myself, which is massively better than the all-time top 50 managers and significantly better than the top 50 managers. Now, there isn't necessarily any secret recipe to selecting the best captain. Of course, it's easy for me to sit here and say, pick the best guy who's going to score the most points each week. But we know that variance, all these sort of things are factors in each game week. However, something that I can say is a strategy that I picked, and we can see that in the graphics below, is selecting premium assets whenever you can is the best move to make. Mo Salah was such a consistent captaincy. We didn't need to veer away anything other than him. And when we did look to veer away, it was for other premium assets like Son, like Ronaldo, like Fernandes. Now, again, we can have some differentials here and there, but it really is pick your battles. We can see here in the top 10 captaincy total points, we can see a few assets here are a little bit differentials who came up trumps for me. And that's going to be Bowen and Reece James. They're only the few occasions where I went against the grain of these premiums and went for a bit more of a differential budget option. And again, then you start to roll the dice. And if you do get lucky, in particular the likes of Jota as well, got 16 points, then it can be really great for your rank. But I think over the course of the season, I think a sprinkle of differentials is great, but consistently putting the captaincy on proven premium assets, in particular midfielders, is a proven strategy that I think over the course of the season is going to definitely do you service. Okay guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. Again, this was all about deep diving into my season. Again, finishing 270th is one of those one-off seasons. So hopefully me checking out the Fix Skills benchmark is giving you a bit of an understanding on the type of manager I am, the decision making that I made and why I made it. And hopefully gives you a few tips and tricks maybe that you could take into the new season. So if you enjoyed what you saw, guys, I really do urge you to check out all the information in the bio. Check out Fantasy Football Fix's preseason pack. Sign yourself up to the 7-day free trial and give yourself the best chance of winning those mini leagues in the new season. And if you are new in the channel, make sure you do drop a like on the video and hit that subscribe button with preseason content dropping all throughout the season. You don't want to be missing a thing, so hit that notification bell while you're at it. We will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.